the sheriff everyone trusted. Maple Ridge, population just under 8,000. A sleepy town tucked between cornfields and quiet highways. A place where doors were left unlocked. Neighbors waved on Main Street, and everyone knew everyone's name. At the center of it all was Sheriff William Carter, a man who wore his badge with pride, a man the community believed would protect them no matter what. But sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. William Bill Carter was elected sheriff in 1996. He was everything Maple Ridge wanted in a lawman: firm, friendly, and familiar. He grew up in the same town, attended the same schools, and even coached Little League on weekends. Under his watch, crime rates dropped to historic lows. Parents felt safe letting their kids walk to school. The county fair saw record attendance. To most, Sheriff Carter was the reason Maple Ridge still felt like the kind of town America had forgotten. At church on Sundays, people shook his hand. At town hall meetings, he listened patiently. He was the sheriff who never raised his voice, because he never had to. His presence alone commanded respect. Background: archival photos of sheriffs, small-town parades, faded pictures of 90s community life. But behind the smiles and small-town charm, a few details never quite added up. Locals recalled how certain case files would vanish from the records room. A burglary investigation quietly dropped, though suspects had been in custody. A domestic abuse case disappeared, the victim suddenly leaving town. At the time, no one dared to question it. After all, who would suspect Sheriff Carter? The man who shook hands with their children, who prayed alongside them on Sundays. Still, whispers floated through Maple Ridge. A drifter was found dead in his cell. A farmer who swore he saw Carter meeting with men he didn't recognize, at odd hours out by the quarry. And then there were the disappearances. Unsolved, unspoken, quietly filed away. But in Maple Ridge, silence was a form of loyalty. For more than 2 years, Sheriff Carter held Maple Ridge in the palm of his hand. He was the man who posed for newspaper photos, the man who marched at the head of the Memorial Day parade. To the outside world, Carter was a model of law enforcement, small-town America's finest. But those who looked closer saw something else. A man with too much control. No investigation began without his approval. No deputy dared challenge his word. He had turned Maple Ridge into a place of peace, but also a place where fear lived quietly in the shadows. For years, the sheriff's image remained untouchable. The community believed in him, trusted him, loved him. But in October of 1998, all of that would change. On the October 12th, 1998, Maple Ridge was dressed in autumn colors, golden leaves, cool air, and the calm rhythm of small-town life. But that evening, everything changed. Jessica Monroe, a bright 19-year-old with her whole future ahead of her, left a friend's house at 9:15 p.m. She never made it home. Her car was found parked by the roadside, keys in the ignition, purse untouched. It was as if Jessica had simply vanished into thin air. But when the investigation began, Maple Ridge would learn that not every search is meant to uncover the truth. Sometimes it's meant to bury it. Jessica wasn't a troublemaker. She wasn't rebellious. She was the kind of young woman people described as sweet, dependable, the girl you trusted to babysit your kids. On the night she disappeared, Jessica had been watching movies with her best friend. She waved goodbye, got into her little red sedan, and started the short drive home. She never arrived. The next morning, her father called police when she failed to show up for work. Within hours, Sheriff William Carter himself was on the scene, standing beside Jessica's abandoned car. To the community, this was reassuring. But for some, it would later be chilling. Sheriff Carter ordered a full-scale search. Deputies combed the cornfields, bloodhounds traced scents into the woods, and volunteers scoured every ditch and road. But strangely, the investigation seemed sloppy. Evidence markers weren't logged correctly. Witness statements were taken late. And the roadside where Jessica's car was found? It wasn't cordoned off until nearly 12 hours later, long after evidence could have been contaminated. Still, Carter stood in front of cameras, assuring the public that Maple Ridge's finest were on the case. Weeks passed. Leads dried up. and the once hopeful town began to accept a painful truth. Jessica Monroe was gone. Behind the scenes, whispers began to grow louder. Jessica's diary revealed she had recently been confiding in a close friend. She wrote of a man who wouldn't leave her alone, a man who always seemed to be watching. But when those pages were handed to the sheriff's office, they were never entered into official evidence. Even more troubling, a farmer recalled seeing Sheriff Carter's cruiser parked along the same stretch of road where Jessica's car was found. This was around the same time she vanished. When questioned, Carter dismissed it, saying he was patrolling. The report never made it past the draft stage. And then came the most disturbing revelation. Jessica had reportedly confided to her sister that she felt unsafe around someone in law enforcement. She didn't say who. She didn't have to. Jessica Monroe's disappearance left Maple Ridge in shock. To the public, Sheriff Carter was a grieving protector, leading a desperate search for justice. But behind closed doors, suspicion began to grow. Why were key pieces of evidence ignored? Why were files going missing? And why did it feel like someone was working harder to control the story than to solve the crime? For 20 years, these questions would remain buried in the shadows of Maple Ridge, until one man decided to break his silence. Watch out for the Behind the Crime channel for episode 3, The Deputy's Confession. Subscribe and turn on your notification so you can be notified when the next revealing story is uploaded.